Gonna do Jeopardy?
You'll do it on
Zoom
your
Jeopardy?
own. So like we won't do
Oh.
a Zoom meeting Jeopardy and like put you in teams. Maybe that could be done, but you can get through Jeopardy on your own so much quicker than you could with me guiding you through the game. So we actually will not meet tomorrow. I'll just post the Jeopardy and the Quizlet. You study the Jeopardy and the Quizlet when you decide you want to study the Jeopardy and Quizlet, and you make that your half hour of a class. That's totally up to you, and that does not bother me one little bit. So yeah, you do that. Any questions on that? Feel okay about it? All right, cool. So let's jump into this. We were talking about viral diseases last time, and this is a slide we ended on. We talked about HIV causing AIDS, and then eventually the person has such poor white blood cells and such a poor immunity that they'll die of something else. We have chickenpox and shingles, which are the same virus. It just stays in your body forever. So let's start our review with that. When the kid has chickenpox and they're covered in red, itchy sores, is that virus currently in the lytic cycle or the lysogenic cycle? Raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if you think you know it. Lytic cycle or lysogenic cycle? I see Mitch. So let's go with Mitch. Lytic or lysogenic when the kid is covered in red sores?
Lytic.
Winner. He is the winner. Good job. So then when it goes into dormancy, like it is right now in my body, dang it, mom and dad. What cycle is it in me right now? Thomas Roeder.
Wait, no, it's lytic and it's the other one. I know that. I just forgot the word.
That's okay. Lauren, jump in and help him out. You had a thumb up.
Yeah, lysogenic.
Lysogenic. You got it. Lysogenic. It just stays in my DNA forever. Oh, stupid chicken pox. All right, cool. Moving on. So you guys know the lytic and the lysogenic cycle. The common cold, we talked about that last time, is a family of viruses. So many viruses cause the common cold, one of which is coronaviruses. And we don't vaccinate against common cold because it doesn't kill a lot of people, and it's such a broad family of viruses that it's really would be difficult to make a vaccine that would even get the job done. Infectious hepatitis, Mitch so very appropriately put the smiley emoji that is, I think, poop causes Hep A, and he's absolutely right. Yes, absolutely, that is correct. Fecal oral route, not a very glamorous thing to think about, but make sure you trust your cook or your chef, and I don't know, just, yeah, be careful with what you eat. And then influenza. Influenza killed like 36,000 people in the U.S. last year. It's a respiratory infection. People will get secondary infections after they're sick with the flu, especially the elderly and the ones with respiratory issues. So that's a new problem, and we do get new strains of the flu all the time. So that's where we left off last time. Let's go to some new stuff. There's measles and rubella, and I don't think I'm going to show you this video. It's kind of a long one. It would take a lot of the class time, but if you want to check it out on your own, you sure can. Measles and rubella are childhood diseases that we essentially don't see anymore because in your MMR vaccine that all little kiddos get, well, I can't say that. Most little kiddos get measles, mumps, and rubella are taken care of at like 3 or 4 months old, and those diseases are essentially gone. And so that's MMR. They're RNA viruses. You do not have to memorize that. What I would like you to know about measles is, if you didn't already get that from the video we watched yesterday, is measles is super contagious. Very, very, very contagious because it is not a droplet disease. It's an airborne disease. And once it's suspended in the air, any kid whose skin contacts that or they inhale that can get the measles. As long as your vaccination rate is high, 97% or better, measles is going to go extinct. Your vaccination rate drops below that, which the United States accomplished like 3 years ago. Measles makes a comeback, and it's a pretty bad deal because measles, like HIV, gets in your white blood cells and goes into your lymphatic system. That's the reason kids get those red sores over their entire body, is once the measles virus infects a white blood cell, the white blood cell goes into the lymph nodes to tell more white blood cells, like, get out here, guys, there's somebody here. It gets the measles virus in your lymph system, and your lymph system is just like your cardiovascular system, where you have arteries and veins that run everywhere, arms, legs, neck, head, everywhere has got arteries and veins. Well, your lymph vessels do the same thing. They go everywhere. So once that virus gets in the lymph vessels, it's a done deal. You know, that kid's got a virus everywhere throughout their entire body. And that's not a great situation. So that's measles and rubella. Polio is one we don't see very often. We still vaccinate for polio. A lot of developing countries have a tough time with polio, and they love it when we send vaccines for polio. You'll see kids walking around with real crooked legs using sticks to help them walk, because polio, unfortunately, does get into a child's nervous system, and it can cause permanent paralysis. So you'll see kids using sticks to walk, and they've got real thin legs, and that's paralyzing the child. And it's a very sad deal. So you see a lot of polio in developing countries. United States, seeing polio is incredibly rare because we vaccinate for it. So that is essentially gone in the U.S. And as long as we keep vaccinating for it, it will be gone. But that's something that we used to deal with, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. That was a deal. Rabies is one you've probably all heard about, living in South Dakota, where we have, things like raccoons and skunks and stray dogs. Most kids are told about rabies here in the States. Rabies is an RNA virus. I don't care so much you understand that it's an RNA virus as I do that you understand that rabies lives in the nervous system. It gets in the animal's bloodstream. It goes up to the brain, starts to infect the brain and spinal cord. The animal makes really poor decisions as the brain gets deteriorated. So you'll see things like raccoons will be out in the middle of the daytime, just standing there, not moving. Don't touch that raccoon. That's a bad thing, right? They're a nocturnal animal. They're pretty shy. They're just standing in the daytime, not moving, drooling. That's probably a rabid raccoon, right? We mostly find this in carnivores, because the carnivore, as it starts to make really poor choices, will fight and bite other carnivores, which is interesting because the virus lives in the saliva. The carnivore bites the other animal, and then the saliva carries that virus into the other animal. So it's pretty easy to imagine a situation where a raccoon with rabies is out, standing there in the daylight, and your dog goes up and approaches it and is growling, and the raccoon doesn't have the sense to go away. The dog starts to get after the raccoon bites a dog, and then we're progressing towards the end of Old Yeller, right? You guys have all seen Old Yeller? Thumbs up for Old Yeller. No. Oh my goodness. 2 thumbs up and everybody's shaking their heads no. Well, if you're in the mood to cry tonight, watch Old Yeller. If you don't want to cry, don't watch Old Yeller. Watch something funny. Old Yeller's not funny. Gets real. But rabies is the end of Old Yeller. Spoiler alert. Sorry, YouTube. Everybody's seen Old Yeller. I know it's an old movie, classic. You can read the book if you like. Anyways, 9 days after they get infected, it's found in the saliva. 16 days after they're infected, you're definitely dead. Humans can catch rabies. Rabid animal bites the human's going to get rabies. If you live in a country where you have a vaccine for it, like I had mentioned before, this is like the only virus where you can get the vaccine after infection and it will work, and it's amazing. If you go unvaccinated, your odds of dying are way above, like 99.5%. Like this is the end, just like the dog. Nervous system, drooling, choking on your own drool, and that's a done deal, guaranteed. Trying to think, maybe only a handful of people have survived rabies ever. And one girl they put in a medically induced coma and then brought her out of it, and she survived rabies. That was pretty out there. But yeah, don't get rabies. When in doubt, shoot the raccoon in your yard who's standing there drooling in the daytime, and you'll save your dog and you'll save yourself. Okay, there's a rabies video. I don't want to watch it. It makes me sad. It's not Old Yeller either. Okay, next one, West Nile virus. West Nile virus, you guys are probably maybe old enough to remember this. I don't really know a year, but man, West Nile virus was brand new. And here we go, 1999, I guess. Ooh, are you guys old enough to remember that? How old are you? When were you guys born? Somebody unmute this and tell me you're
2002.
Oh, dang it.
2003.
So you guys would have been just teeny tiny tots when West Nile was going along, but West Nile.
2003.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. So just little guys. By the time it spread across the whole United States right quick and in a hurry. Eastern South Dakota had West Nile bad. Because of how humid it is and how many mosquitoes they had. Western South Dakota, we hardly got any West Nile. But when it made its run through, Eastern South Dakota got hit. And I had students whose parents had it. And essentially, we had never had West Nile in humans before, and it was mosquitoes that transferred it from birds to humans. And so a bird had the West Nile virus, the mosquito bit the bird, then went and bit a person and gave the person West Nile. They have, fevers in excess of 105 Fahrenheit, and neurological damage, and it's bad. Long-lasting muscle, what would you call it? I guess nervous damage, motor input to the muscles. Not a good time. It spread across the whole country in 3 years, and it didn't kill tons of people, but it freaked people out because there's not a lot you can do about it once you get the virus. Tremors and convulsions is the nervous system piece of that. Swollen lymph nodes is nothing special. You get a bacterial infection, viral infection, doesn't matter. Your lymph nodes swell up because you're making white blood cells and transporting white blood cells like crazy. So that's not that special. When the doctor has you look up at the doctor's office and they do this kind of deal here, they're feeling the cervical chain lymph nodes to see if they're big and swollen. It tells them you're fighting some sort of infection. So that's not special to West Nile by any means. So that's the West Nile virus as a viral disease you might want to know about. All right, couple of images to kind of help you with some of these. Here you've got your infected saliva from the raccoon, goes into the muscles and bloodstream of the dog. The virus replicates and goes to the dog's spinal cord where it gets to the dog's brain. More baby viruses, virions that are ready to go are in the dog's saliva. And when the dog bites a person, the rabies cycle continues. Here's polio. You can see the paralysis and the frames holding this kid's legs transferred to her by a mosquito. And short of a vaccine, there's nothing you can do for it. So America, you're vaccinated as kids. Polio is not going to be a deal. India, Africa, polio is a big deal. And it's real sad too. And then a picture of measles, which was very common not that long ago, but that you guys have probably never even seen. Okay, let's talk emerging viruses. Emerging viruses is, I don't want to use the word funny. Emerging virus is an interesting thing to teach because I have to continually update my notes because it changes every 2 years. There's always new viruses showing up. And so let's talk about emerging viruses. Bear in mind that emerging viruses does not mean new. It means new to humans. Most viruses that we have are not brand new, show up out of nowhere that we've never seen before. They're showing up to us new, but they were in other animals to start with. So HIV was a virus we found in Africa and nobody knew where it came from. Once we were able to take pictures of it and look at it, we found that there's a virus called SIV, which was found in primates and apes. And so it's pretty likely that based on their shape, HIV probably originated in monkeys. And it's a blood-to-blood transfer. So at some point, somebody hunted probably a sick monkey, right? Easy to shoot and kill because it's sick and slow. And then during the butchering process, maybe they cut the monkey and they cut themselves. And then they get a little bit of that virus in their bloodstream. Maybe it was a food prep thing and they didn't cook it all the way through and they had medium rare monkey steaks where there was blood in that meat and they got the HIV virus that way. Nobody really knows. We don't know where it first started. We just know there's an SIV virus that looks just like HIV. So the odds that it came from monkeys is really high. Does that kind of make sense? Cool. Got a couple head nods. All right. Emerging viruses that are brand new to people. All right, Ebola. This one had people super freaked out. I have a pretty high tolerance of weird stuff before I get freaked out. But to be completely honest, I had a little bit of nerves about Ebola because Ebola had really only been seen in Africa. And where they were seeing it in Africa, it was killing about 90% of people, and there was no effective vaccine for it. And that made me nervous. Now, for the most part, Ebola numbers were small, so I wasn't that nervous. But boy, just a few years ago, Ebola had an outbreak in Central Africa. The healthcare systems were overwhelmed. People were dying in the streets from it. You bleed from the mouth, bleed from the eyes. It's just terrible. And so Doctors Without Borders went down to help. And many of them were American. And we ended up bringing back 2 cases of Ebola. one of which was in Nebraska. And that was like, okay, I'm starting to feel a tiny bit nervous now. What we found with the folks who came back to America is they were not hitting that 90% mortality rate, not even close. They quarantined them. It didn't spread. Those people survived. So it probably had a lot to do with healthcare, hygiene, transmission, and quarantine. And in America, we kept it pretty reined in. So that was cool. But you also learned yesterday Ebola has a small R naught number. So it probably wasn't that contagious. But that had me a little bit nervous, to be completely honest. I was kind of wishing I lived in a little smaller town at that point. But we were all right. It all worked out. Hantavirus. This one jumped from mice to people. Again, emerging because it's new to us. We found it in the American Southwest. We're talking about Arizona and New Mexico, dry, dusty places. And basically what happens is this virus exists in the mouse. It's not generally fatal to the mouse, but in the dry, dusty places, the mouse excretes the hantavirus in its feces and its urine. And then when the person is sweeping the house or people are running around, those little tiny particles of like dry mouse feces get suspended up into the air, and the person inhales them, and it causes terrible respiratory virus in your lungs called hantavirus, which can be deadly. It's very, very dangerous. And there were some outbreaks, and it took a while to figure out where the virus was coming from. So that's hantavirus. You can get that still. You can get that if you're not in the American Southwest. Like, you can get hantavirus right here in South Dakota. So do treat that carefully. If you're in an old nasty garage and it's full of old mouse droppings, grab one of those $2 N95 white construction masks and throw it on. Be safe. Sweep it up. But that can be a danger. Of course, the irony is right now, you can't buy an N95 face mask for $100, right? They're all sold out because everybody's doomsday prepping for the virus. So don't do that now. Save your mouse poop cleaning for another day and enjoy your quarantine some way else. I'm sure you all are super excited to go clean the dusty mouse poop from your garage anyway. Probably should have told Jackson Herman that before he got that one behind his couch, huh? Just kidding, Jackson. I'm sure you're at 100%. Is Jackson Herman with us today? I'm clicking through my students. I don't see him. That's all right. Okay, SARS. You guys probably remember SARS or close to it. SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome. Once again, came from our friends in China. Brand new virus. Super low mortality rate. I mean, really low. But it did spread quickly and really freaked people out. Not so much because of the mortality. It didn't shut down schools or a national economy like this one is, right? But it freaked people out because what SARS showed us, what SARS taught us, was that basically a handful of people got sick in China. One person got on an airplane. Everybody on that airplane essentially got sick. The plane landed in New York, and that virus covered the nation like that. It moved so fast. And so way back in 2002, 2003, SARS taught us a cool lesson, which was we're not an island. The world is so globalized with trade and travel that when a virus originates in China, it's going to be here in a couple of days, whether you like it or not. Like, that's a fact, right? And you and I are living that right now. So I guess do with that what you will. But SARS taught us that neat lesson. And of course, right now, COVID did the same thing. Started in China and jumped here. So there's that, I guess. So it came from animals to humans, rest of the world by people who were traveling. And it literally covered the world in a year, which sounds so cool. A year ago when I taught this, and now that you guys have literally seen this happen with coronavirus, you're like, yeah, I thought all viruses did that. Some other emerging viruses. These I had to add. These are new. Zika virus. Thumbs up if you've heard of Zika in your life. Cool. Okay, so this is recent enough that you guys have heard of Zika virus. Zika virus is super duper sad. I don't even like putting pictures of Zika virus on my PowerPoint because it makes me so sad. But Zika virus was in 2015 and 2016, and it was carried by a mosquito. Now, the mosquito carries the virus, bites the person, and the virus infects people. Now, it wasn't that the virus was necessarily that deadly, but was the fact that the virus did something kind of unique where it crossed a placental barrier. and would infect a developing baby. As you guys know, humans are placental mammals, so the baby makes a placenta. Placenta attaches to the endometrium, which is the inner muscle layer of mom's uterus, and we share oxygen, fluid, carbon dioxide, nutrients from food. Those all go to the baby through a capillary bed touching another capillary bed. It's an awesome barrier. Most pathogens, bacteria, viruses, they can't get to that baby because the placenta is such a good barrier. Zika virus could jump the placental barrier and infect the kid. And that's where things got real sad, because what it caused was microcephaly. Micro means small, cephalo means head, and this is a normal child's head, proportional to the face. And in Zika babies, they were like a third of what they should be. And it was just heartbreaking because all these kids were being born with these teeny, tiny brains, and nobody knew what this was going to look like when they grew up. You know, how this would affect development, how this would affect cognition. And it was just a brand new area. Nobody knew anything about it. And it was terrifying because it was spreading throughout developing countries, Haiti, the DR, South and Central America. Mosquitoes were carrying this stuff around. People were very nervous in the United States, using lots of bug spray in the United States. And the regulations then were that basically the genus of mosquitoes that carried it didn't live in the U.S., so that we were going to be okay, essentially, was the idea. But people were still nervous, and not everybody trusted that, because it's a scary and it's a very sad thing. So that's a diagram. There are Google images of actual babies who are born with Zika virus, but I just can't stand to put it on here because it makes me so sad. That's Zika. Okay, and then coronavirus, which I'm sure you haven't heard anything about. Coronavirus is literally all that is on the news, Google, Facebook. It's coronavirus is the news, right? COVID-19 for the year that it came out, which was 19. Coronaviruses are not new. It's a big family of viruses. There's lots of them, but COVID-19 is a new strain that has just recently jumped to people. As you guys know, the data that we have for it so far, which is super shady because we don't have that much data about it. That's all there is to it for right now, which is frustrating, but we're getting some pretty good data thanks to New York. Sorry, New York. I know it's not fun there. But from an animal host to a human, from what I've heard, there's some different thoughts on it, but the most popular idea went something like bat, possibly to another animal, then to people. But I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe you guys know, are watching the news better than I am. But what I had heard from what I'd seen was they were proposing, based on the virus's shape, that it was bat to pangolin to people from the wet markets in China. And so I don't know. I don't eat a lot of bat. I also don't eat a lot of pangolin. So it's hard to say. But that's, I guess, was the most popular idea. Oh, I've got a comment. Maybe somebody knows in the chat box who watches the news. Shoot everything in your yard to be safe. Nope, that's not it. Okay, so we're so close. I thought we might have an answer like, we know the host. I don't watch the news. I think it's depressing. But there you have it. So that's COVID-19, and you can see the picture here, or you can see the picture behind Hadley's head, and there you have the coronavirus shape. This picture here is people outside of the ER in the waiting room because they don't have the room in the ER for the number of people who are sick, which is why we're all home social distancing. Rapid City Regional has like 250 beds, something along those lines, give or take. And that's an important thing, that we don't overwhelm that hospital. And so that's why we're all doing what we're doing. But that's really the end of our chapter. So we're at about